Brave New World does things that I never expected to ever see in my life. Harrison Ford in a Marvel movie, the Tiamat Island from Eternals finally gets some recognition, and Incredible Hulk characters and threads return. Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome back, because today I'm going to give you guys my review for the newest installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first of 3 movies this year, and so as the 4th movie in the Captain America series, Captain America Brave New World, directed by Julius Onah, and so as starring Anthony Mackie as the title character this time around of Captain America, with the supporting cast of Danny Ramirez, Carl Lumbly, Harrison Ford, and more. Let me know down below in the comments that if you've seen the movie, what did you think about Brave New World? And let me know that in the comments. I would love to know that. And with that said, let's get started. The movie follows Sam settling into his role as Captain America as he finds himself caught in the middle of an international incident after an assassination attempt on the life of President Thaddeus Ross. He must soon uncover the true reason behind this global plot, and Sam and his allies must find a way to uncover the truth and stop the villain behind everything before the entire world goes into chaos. A movie that I've been wanting to see out of the MCU for a very long time, ever since the very end of Avengers Endgame, was a Sam Wilson Captain America movie. I've always enjoyed Sam Wilson. I think Anthony Mackie is great in the role. I think the MCU has done a great job of handling his time as Falcon. And ever since the end of Endgame several years back, I have been hoping to see a Captain America movie with him in the title role. I think there's no other character in the MCU right now who could fit that bill better than Sam Wilson himself. And we had the Falcon the Winter Soldier just a few years back, which is a show that I do enjoy. I don't like it nearly as much as I did initially, but I still like it more than as far as what we've had, and so as being one of my favorite of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, and I am excited to see more of him as Captain America since that show's ended, and it has been a long time since we've last seen him in the MCU, and now this movie finally brings him back to the mainstream. And ever since then, there's just a lot of stuff announced behind this movie that leaves me with very split feelings on this being the story and character introductions they're doing for a Captain America movie that's led by Sam Wilson for the very first time. So I had some worries coming into it, but had some glimmer of hope that maybe this will turn out to be a good movie. And what did I think about it? I thought Brave New World was perfectly average. It is not as good as I hoped it was going to be. However, I don't think it was as bad as I was worried it could be either. It has its pros, it has its cons, but overall, it's decent. And kicking things off with the positives, I think that this movie does firmly establish right off the bat that Sam Wilson truly lives up to the role of Captain America. That no matter what happens in this story, I think that he is great in this role yet again, and I think that this continues to establish my belief in the MCU that Sam Wilson was truly the best and only pick to play as Captain America in the MCU post the Infinity Saga. And Anthony Mackie is just so fun and charismatic in this role. He steps into the role of being the lead character very well, and he has a good amount of charisma to the role where I can buy him as the lead, and so as being a character that I really enjoyed following. And even though there's a bit of a more serious edge to him considering the story at hand, I think Anthony Mackie was able to pull this off very well. And if there's one thing I'm happy Brave New World does well, it's just showing that Sam Wilson is worthy enough to carry this mantle for Marvel for the next couple of movies, depending on how much further we will be seeing Sam in this role. And another thing I also really like too is Harrison Ford. He steps into the role of Thaddeus Ross after the passing of William Hurt, and Harrison Ford just knocks it out of the park. He is one of the MVPs of this movie. He by far has the most of character work as far as a character arc goes, which I really appreciate about change and whether he could be a better person. And especially with how Red Hulk plays into the story, which temper your expectations if you thought he'd be in it more than he thought he was going to be.
Don't be rash.
But I really liked Harrison Ford. I think he fit the role really nicely. Marvel and this movie utilized his talents as an actor very well, and I think he definitely had the best character story out of everybody in Brave New World. And the back and forth scenes between Anthony and Harrison, I think, are some of the movie's best scenes, and I really appreciated it. As far as some of the side characters go, I like some of them. The others I didn't care as much for, but by far the ones I really like, I enjoyed Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, the new Falcon. I was afraid about the fact that Bucky not being a supporting character in this was going to leave a big hole here because he was a big part of the previous 3 Captain America movies. And thankfully, Joaquin fills the bill well. He's more quippy, he's more funny, he's definitely the comedic relief of the story, but he plays off of Sam and Isaiah really nicely, and I enjoyed his presence here, and I am hoping we get to see a little bit more of him as Falcon in the upcoming years of the MCU. Carl Lumbly, I love as an actor, and I've enjoyed him as Isaiah Bradley. He was one of my favorite parts of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And even though I wish they did more with him in this movie, considering the story they set up for him, I still really enjoyed his presence in the movie, and so as what his role in the story does to impact Sam and Joaquin's mission in Brave New World. And outside of that, I think that it is a movie that definitely has moments of greatness in here. There are some action sequences here that, while not on the level of the previous Captain America movies, I think there's some good stuff in here. The fighter pilot aerial action sequence where Captain America and Falcon are fighting the fighter jets in the air on Celestial Island, as seen in the trailers, I think is awesome. It is a really cool sequence that showcases how different Sam as Captain America is from somebody like Steve Rogers. It is cool, it's thrilling. For the most part, it looks good, and I think it is just one of the best sequences put into screen for Brave New World. And the actual fight between Captain America and Red Hulk is pretty much what I expected it to be as far as how long it's going to run for goes for. But I did enjoy the fight with how it starts, what Sam does, how does he go up against Red Hulk, considering he doesn't have the super soldier serum, and he is a character who pretty much has to rely on his intellect and his strategic skills and his abilities to fight off a threat who's very powerful. I thought the fight there was good, and there's some hand-to-hand combat and stuff, especially stuff with the shield, that I do think is good. Not the best hand-to-hand combat in these movies or in the MCU by a long shot, but aside from some weird and choppy editing that happens in some of those action sequences in particular, I thought they were fine. The action sequences here I thought were noteworthy and good enough for the kind of movie that this was and for how production ran for this movie. And the music by Laura Karpman I think is great. It is one of the biggest highlights of Brave New World. It has this very eerie and haunting tone to it. For a movie that's trying to be a thriller with a serious tone, I think the music is very good. It fits this kind of movie very well, and it's definitely one of the parts of this movie that stands out and is very memorable and evokes a different feeling than some recent MCU movies do. And as far as that kind of tone goes, I do think for the most part, it does a mostly good job of settling for this tone. There are some times where I feel like it pulls out of that mature tone it's going for, to where it doesn't lean on it as hard as a movie it's trying to be kind of similar to, which is Captain America the Winter Soldier, one of the greatest movies in the MCU of all time.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
And I think that if they were to remove certain scenes that feel pretty jokey and pretty quippy at points, for the most part, it does tone it down a bit. It has a more serious nature than a few of the more recent MCU movies that I do enjoy for that. So it kind of does something that I like that it commits to it, even if I wish it committed to it further. But as far as Captain America movies go, this is my least favorite out of the four. I do think the story is pretty half-baked, where there are some ideas of the story here that I really like, and then there's story ideas here that I'm not really crazy about. And it felt a bit like so much of it didn't have as much time to be fleshed out, developed to where things feel more satisfying and properly put together. It felt very rushed from point A to point B. And it reminded me of The Marvels, which is a movie that I did enjoy. And it is a fun watch with characters I really like as far as their chemistry together as a trio in that movie. But aside from that, it felt like the movie was just moving through the motions from point A to point B to point C. Not as much character progression. It feels like a lot was cut out of the movie. And that's the same vibe I got watching Brave New World, to where there's ideas here that I like, ideas here that I'm not crazy for, and stuff that it does retread a little bit from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but maybe not as well done. And especially when it comes to the main villain of this movie, who I was really looking forward to seeing return in the MCU for the first time in a very long time. And I unfortunately felt really disappointed with how the character was utilized. It felt like a lot about the character was cut out from what has happened ever since we last saw him. And he had a motivation that I actually do really like and what his plan was. but it just felt like the way he was written and the way it was put together, it just left a lot of pieces out to where a lot of moving parts just weren't shown. When these things happen, it just felt like he was a threat who could have had more of a threatening presence than he did. And I think the way it was resolved was really underwhelming considering the kind of story they're telling and how this character is supposed to factor in everything. So how they used the villain, I thought, was definitely one of the more disappointing aspects of Brave New World.
What? No.
As far as Isaiah Bradley goes, I wish that his story was a little bit more prevalent. It feels like it was very important at first until it gets shafted as it goes on, until it gets to the very end. And I wish they developed on that more, because Brave New World feels like a movie with a story where I can tell when the reshoots happen and what was looking like a part of the initial plan and what was edited in here. And the side character of Ruth felt very weak to me. I didn't feel like she was a character that really stood out to me. And as far as what her role was in the story, it feels like a character that could have been played by literally anyone else, whether it's insert another Black Widow, whether it's insert even Sharon Carter in here, because we haven't seen her since Falcon the Winter Soldier. And I thought she was one of the weaker characters in this movie. I didn't feel like she was that compelling, and I didn't care for her just as a whole. She was a weak spot for me. And with Brave New World 2, the visual effects are pretty hit or miss. Not the worst MCU movie when it comes to visual effects, because there are some shots and work in this movie that I thought that actually looks really cool. And then there's balancing it out with visual effects work that look pretty weak. The third act especially. Red Hulk himself, I think, looks great. But then everything else surrounding him, from the background of the cherry blossoms to even some of the stuff we see in the fight sequences, it just left a lot to be desired, and that's a bit of a shame coming from a movie in one of the best franchises in the MCU, like Captain America. So visual effects really hit or miss for this movie, and there are some side characters who either I didn't care for as much or I wish they were utilized more further. And as far as the story goes, it definitely feels like a story that had ideas that would have been cool if it was fully fleshed out and fully developed, but it feels like they really trimmed a lot of this movie down to where when I watched it, feels like I was watching a story where not all the beats were there. And that's a bit unfortunate, and I do think that the movie does a weaker job of Sam Wilson's story than Falcon the Winter Soldier did. This movie feels a little bit like we're retreading that ground, just in case people who hadn't seen that show will watch this movie. But I do think that whereas there are things in this movie I do really like with what they've done with Sam as Captain America, just leading the story, I do think that his overall story arc isn't as good as what the show gave us a couple years back. And as far as what more I can say about Brave New World goes, it's thankfully not as bad as I've heard people make it out to be. This was the most nervous I've been coming into a Marvel movie, and I can say that it is a movie I found enjoyment out of. I naturally enjoy the character of Sam Wilson, and he definitely was one of the bright spots for me. And if anything, I hope we get another Captain America movie with him in the title role. And I'm hoping that we get to see him lead the Avengers in Avengers Doomsday and Secret War, see more of him as a character, and show why he is a character who can serve as a leader, continue this mantle, and continue what Steve Rogers wanted him to do. Brave New World as a whole is a movie that I thought was fine. It is nowhere near being like this awful movie I was hearing from reception before I saw it, but it's also not a movie that I think is great or one of the best of the last couple of years as far as modern Marvel movies go. So Brave New World is just, it's perfectly okay. It's watchable. I liked Sam Wilson and President Ross in this movie. There's some action sequences I enjoyed. I enjoyed some of the tone they went for and some of the sequences they went for. But I do think that the story could have been fleshed upon better, and it could have been more polished, considering the fact that this is the very first time we have a Captain America movie with Sam Wilson leading it. So overall, I thought it was okay, even if there were a couple of problems in there. So in the end, I'm going to give Captain America Brave New World a B-. Gotta say too, I gotta give a shout out to this popcorn bucket. It's so cool. I like it so much. So shout out Brave New World for that, because that is a cool popcorn bucket to add to my collection.
Groovy.
So as for the movie, it's enjoyable. It's decent. So thankfully it pretty much reached where my expectations were set for this movie. And I do think it's a little strange to have a follow-up to Incredible Hulk in some ways in this movie, considering the circumstances with the Hulk rights and putting it all in a story about Captain America. So for what it's worth, it's definitely a movie that I thought was just entertaining. And even though I wished it was better than it was, and it's not as good as the other 3 Captain America movies, I do think it does at least solidify that I really enjoy Sam Wilson, and I'm happy to see him finally get his own Captain America movie that showcases why he was the best fit for the roles.
I mean, it's alright, like...
So yeah, that's my review for Captain America Brave New World. What are your thoughts on the movie? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Stay tuned for some upcoming videos I have planned, and don't forget to follow me on social media. My username is down below at the bottom of the screen and in the description below, so please go do it while you're at it. And thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button, and stay tuned for more.
You want me? Come and get me!
Nice. Made me happy, made me smile. Nice.